Hi, everyone. Welcome to the nightly restorative check-in through the National Parents Union. It's Friday, August 14th. I literally have to look down every time to remember what the date is because I just feel like time is marching across my face sometimes, but generally marching across pretty quickly. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. Anjali Lafarie. I'm here in Arizona in this beautiful Sonoran desert on Atham land. This show, the Nightly Restorative Check-In, is the brainchild of Marisol Guerrero, my comadre, someone that I just love to infinity and beyond, right, for all you kids. And her thought about this show was that, many of us live for Friday evenings, right? It's the time to relax and connect, but it's also that time to get that social, emotional check-in with the people or from the people that we love. So I love my job, right? But if I wasn't working right now, like what I want to do right after this is I want to chill. I want some good food. I want to be with somebody that I care about. And I just want to get comfortable. Or maybe we can go out to dinner, something like that. But after the pandemic and after things are done. But anyway, so Marisol, she brought me onto the show early on as one of her guests because I'm a psychologist, a hypnotherapist, and a professor at a local community college. And on that show, I exposed the audience to a breath pattern called 4-7-8. And so I want to maintain the integrity of the show and continue that because that's what she does every Monday and Wednesday. I really appreciate that every Monday and Wednesday she plugs the Friday show. So I want to reroute you all back and say that if you like the content on Fridays, also make sure that you're watching on Mondays and Wednesdays at the same time at 6 p.m. All right. So 4-7-8, I know some of you are quite familiar. Others of you, it's your first time. What you're going to do is you're going to inhale for 4 seconds, hold your breath for 7 seconds, and then exhale or release your breath for 8 seconds. And we'll do that 4 times around. I'll count it out for you so you don't have to worry. I really encourage you to close your eyes, or if that's not comfortable or you can't do it, to then pick a focal point. And the reason for that is because it's really easy to get distracted when you're in these meditative spaces. So closing your eyes will allow you to kind of increase your focus. Okay, I'm gonna just stop there for now. And some days I give more instructions, some days I give less. But let's leave it there. So I encourage you to kind of get in a comfortable position. I always say, words like uncross your body. That just means take that open posture. So right now, go ahead and take a natural breath. And then when you exhale on your next inhalation, get ready to inhale for 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Release. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Inhale. 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Release. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Inhale. 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Release. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Inhale. 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Release. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay, pretty good. Sorry, I messed up on that third set there. I was laughing at myself because whenever I count like this, I feel like I sound like an aerobics instructor. I think y'all are good. When I say, I always tell you all that I can kind of feel your energy a little bit. I know that one of the indicators for me that I've entered a relaxation response is because I was able to take a fuller and a deeper breath. So that's one way of knowing how, how all this is going for you. All right, so let me kind of more completely introduce myself. Aside from my professional side and the many hats that I wear, my family and my community identity is really important to me. So I'm originally from Southern California. My father was Cuban, and so we have Taino, Arawak, and African roots. My mom is from Guatemala, so we are from Maya territory. I have an amazing brother and sister, amazing friends and family as well, and extended family, but you all have met my brother and sister, so that's why I reference them. I'm also a mom. I have a 20-year-old daughter who I'm sending lots of love and prayers and good energy and vibes to right now. And I'm also a widow. That is an identity that we talked about, I've talked about before, and we'll actually get into more different in some of the different episodes that I host. As far as my community memberships go, I am a member of the Siwa Batli Collective. The Siwa Batli Collective, we are a group of Indigenous women who, most of us who are mothers, or at least take our relationships to as aunties and sisters and cousins very seriously. We support women. We support women and their families. We say from womb to tomb. And actually, the t-shirt I have on right now is partly because of the collective. So I'm like playing with like the distance so y'all can see my t-shirt. Just, okay, if y'all don't know this, I'm bougie. So like I don't wear a t-shirt that often, but I wanted to rep this shirt. I can't show it as much as I want to. This t-shirt is from the Indigenous Breastfeeding Counselor course. So kind of shout out to Kimberly Moore Salas and Cami Goldhammer. This is Indigenous Breastfeeding Week, and then we're also going into Black Breastfeeding Month. And so they created this shirt to be, stand in solidarity with Black women and this month, and especially thinking about just all of the social shifts that are occurring and standing in support with Black lives. So because it's Indigenous Breastfeeding Week, I wanted to make sure that I wore it, and it's a bomb shirt, like a fro and a feather. Like I don't even know what else could be on a shirt that would make me happier. Okay, so all my commercials are finished now. I want to bring in Mrs. Rita Brown. She is the founder of Brownsville Preparatory Institute. They are a pre-K 3 through 3rd grade school in Tallahassee, Florida. So yes, whenever she comes in here, if I think about her school, I think about them teaching 3-year-olds to read. And I've seen it with my own eyes. I've been to the school many times, and I will share some stories about that. They are setting the standard right now for meeting COVID-19 benchmarks in Florida. So let's say hi, Mrs. Brown.
Hi, everybody. How are you?
I am great. I really want to know, I've missed you. A lot has gone on in your life. Really,
so much.
This is the check-in. So how are you? How are you? What's going on?
Okay, so let's see. Where do we begin? God is good all the time, and all the time, God is good. He has carried me through seasons that I didn't think I'd walk through. I feel like I've walked through some amazing seasons of where I didn't think I'd be here. And then COVID came and gave me a whole new season to believe he would walk me through again. And he is. So I can complain about a bunch of things, but at the end of the day, I've got to only feel blessed, just only feel blessed that I've come this far by faith.
And that is you. You are definitely the epitome of resilience, right? The epitome of get it done.
9 lives.
9 lives, you said? I mean, that's the only you that I know. The only, just like everything has a solution. We're going to figure it out. Not taking no for an answer. I don't know any other version of you, whether it's like the version that I've seen in you or the version that I've heard from your daughter. And actually, we need to shout out and make this connection. So if you all remember Dr. Charles, she was my third guest on the show. So she's my best friend. We were talking about diversity initiatives. This is her mom slash. So that means she's my mom too, right? This
That's
is
right. That's right.
Brown. She made Atira and two other amazing children who I should have on my show too.
And I must also say that there is no prescription for motherhood or parenthood. There is no prescription for parenthood. The things that my children are able to do, I wouldn't have even known to tell them to do what they do. So as much as I would love to take the credit for who they are, it is just the grace and the light that has brought people around them to expose them to be who they are. So if I can say anything to parents, I can say, believe in the people around you, whether you like them or not.
That resonates actually with something that you know Trey with Trey Hamp was my guest last week.
Yes.
That's what we were talking about, that like we may have to build community and create community with people who aren't our cup of tea, you know, because we don't have that choice right now. Like, so if we know that going back to collectivistic ways, if we know that our institutional infrastructure is crumbling, then that means we have to go back to community, and we can't always just pick the community we want or we like. We have to pick the community that's like around us and work with them.
Absolutely.
But I want to, okay, but hold on. I want to talk about like, because this is actually something I want to hit on. I hear you, and you're being super humble, very not New York of you. You're being super humble. I do think that there is something special about the parenting aspect of who you are as a mother. And I think about my mom and my parents as well, you know, and your husband, like, yes, you have three magnificent children. My mother has three magnificent children, right? And I'm not bragging. It's just what it is. Like, we're good kids, right? But there is something to be said. There's something special for the fact that like your mom, my mom, you and my mom have raised three children that have multiple degrees, are great kids, are assets to society. That was always my mom's term. I have always said that I think that like moms like you all and parents like you all should write a book, because it's not common, and I don't think it's just luck and chance. So if you had to give some sort of prescription, what are the things outside of the environment that you think helped you to raise the kids that you raised?
I think a lot of times what parents do is they think about who they were. We always think about what we wish we did and didn't do. And we always think about when I have kids, what will I do that my mom did? And what will I surely do that my mom didn't? And you begin to think about that, because there is no book. There really is no book. You know, you begin to think about those things, and all of a sudden you begin to just move. Now, sometimes you have to have the pause and the humility to recognize there are some things you need to let go of. And you also need to be able to look at other people and see the things that you do like. There's no one that's going to have everything that you like. If you ask my daughter, you know, what does she wish her mother wasn't? She's got a list. And now that I have been gracious enough to be able to become a grandmother, I've also gotten the wonderful opportunity to sit back and go, okay, so let's see how that plan works out. Always wishing for the best. But the biggest thing that I always did with my children was I gave them the belief that they can. I didn't know how to tell them how to do the things they did. They're all a whole lot smarter than me. But they would come with a challenge, and I'd say, you'll figure it out. You're greater than you think. You know, I had one son, Tony, that I would always say to him, when you recognize your personal greatness, you're going to let go of some of these childish things and begin to live in your light. Thank you, Jesus.
Yay.
He did. Okay. But I am also who I am today, not only because of him, but he has had a lot of impact in that because of the journey that I had to take with him. You know, and I've had to step out on faith in being his mother and allowing other people to live in his life when I felt that he needed something more or different than me.
That's wow. That's very wise and mature, and that's not about age. That I'm talking about that even psychologically, like the individual maturity that it takes to realize that like I can't do or provide the best thing here, and that someone else can do that. Because like as a mom, that's hard. And I'm even thinking about it in relationships. Like I'll share. I remember one time in a relationship that when I got to a place to realize, you know what, I can't crack this person's heart open, you know, and it didn't mean he didn't love me, but you know, I had reached a point I couldn't do anymore. And when I remember I was working with a practitioner, and you know, she said to me like, if someone else can love him better, you know, like let him be loved better, right, or differently. And it's not a knock on me, but that takes a certain level of maturity and a certain level of self-acceptance to realize
absolutely
that someone else is someone else and needs something else.
And I had to talk myself into it, you know, because it's like, what are you talking about? I'm a good mother. I can do what needs to be done. But in that season, he needed something different. And I need you to know that a lot of my friends and a lot of my family thought that I was absolutely crazy. So folks, what I did was I sent my 9th grade son to live with my then 18, 19-year-old daughter who was in college, living her best life, because she said, well, Mom, you know, send him here. And, you know, I was like, okay, what mother would ever do something like that? And I came down and I visited, and she had very small requests. She wanted a new apartment. You know, she wanted us to pay half of the rent. And she said, I can do this. He can go to school here. We can make it work. And guess what? It worked. And not only that, we didn't even know that there was another backstory to him even coming here. And that's the life I live today.
Sure.
So
Go ahead.
You just never know why you're led to do the things you do. If anybody ever told me that I'd be doing what I do today, I would have laughed them out of the gym. It was not who I was. I've been a self-employed person my entire life, but never thinking that I could be responsible for other people's children. You see, I let someone else be responsible for mine. And then I had another son who went to boarding school. And then my daughter left home at 16. So technically, I've never really raised a child past the age of 16 years old.
Well, but that just speaks to like, like to me, you have your children, your biological children and your grandchildren, whom I'm the godmother to 2 of them, right? You have them on this accelerated path, and that segues into also like your school. So we can go in any direction, but that is like, you have your babies, all of them, you love them like that. You have all of your babies reading very early. And I remember when my nephew was born, and early on, was so verbal. I was counting his words. So, you know, kind of child development is something that an area I used to work in.
Right.
And you were like, start getting him to read, you know? And I was like, how do I do this? How do I get him to read, you know? Because at 1, he had over like 100 words. And like, that's not normal. This child is gifted, you know?
Exactly.
But what I learned about watching you in your school and just knowing the stories, I think at first it could have been like, oh, Atira is just a genius, which she is, you know? No, you have many of your children.
A building full.
Go reading.
Yeah. We're over 1,000 children now, when you think about the 15 years that that I've been doing this. And I don't know if we have time for it, but the little backdrop to the story is that when Tony came to Florida to live with Atira, I thought that this was going to ride out because I knew she was going to go to grad school. But I figured, you know, we came from New York to Tallahassee. You know, who sends their 15 turning 16-year-old daughter 2,500 miles away to go to college? We did. Why? Because it was free. And we did the work not to ever have to pay for college. So we're like, okay, and this is where she wanted to go. FAMU was all she ever talked about. And my husband and I just let grace and mercy step in and said, okay, she can go. So we made a lot of trips to Tallahassee. And we, of course, kept her updated on all the things that was going on, back in New York. And so when she finally said, well, Mom, let Tony come on down here and live with me. I said, okay, we're going to do that. Came down, found a school, set everybody up. Everything was fine. And it was the best thing we ever did. And the reason for that was because he was always beyond his years. So being able to go to class with her because she didn't have a babysitter, or being able to just be around her friends, and she always had a good group of friends. That was never an issue of the kind of people that she chose to be around. He was nothing but a sponge in those environments, and it literally transformed who he wanted to be, because now all he saw was people who wanted to be somebody. All he saw was, strong Black people teaching these classes, and, that's all he saw. Well, Atira decided she was going to go to Arizona State University so she could hang out with you.
And she did. That was the first year I know you guys were like, do you live with her? Like, what is going on? Yes.
All of that. And, she called up and she's like, Mom, I got into Arizona State University. They're giving me an assistantship. I'm going to, whatever they call it, this is where I'm going. And I was like, well, what about Tony? Tony wants to stay in Florida. And she's like, Mom, I'm going to Arizona. This is what I'm going to do, as well she should, as well she should. And then Tony, I'm like, okay, well, Tony, you're going to be coming back to New York. He's like, I don't want to come back to New York. I like Florida. I like Tallahassee. And I literally, I was self-employed in New York. I owned a beauty salon, barbershop, nail salon, beauty supply store, African braiding shop. We bought the building. I was embedded in New York. And I'm like, he must be crazy, if he thinks that I'm just going to get up and go to Florida. But then I said to myself, you know what? What's the most important job that God gave you on this earth? And that was your children, and he was doing well. So it's not like he was cutting up and I'm just going to go watch him cut up. He was doing well. He had settled into himself. And there was only one thing left to do, and that was to come to Florida and reestablish my life here. My husband was still working. He hadn't retired yet. So we did the north-south thing until he retired, and then came. It was like, okay, you cannot leave New York City, pension plan, health insurance, we got to make good decisions. And so, I came down here, and now all of a sudden, I don't want to do what I used to do. I don't have that was 25 years of that. I'm like, I don't have the energy to start that all over again in a brand new place. Right. So we moved on to a block that had 2-acre properties, and I found myself sitting on the block watching the cars go by, very rarely. And Atira called me one day. Now we were just chatting because, that's all you can do on a 2-acre block when you don't see neighbors. And she said to me, she said, Mom, you know what? I need you to do something. So what are you talking about? I live in Tallahassee. What's to do here? She said, Mom, no, you're not the same mom. I'm not getting the same energy from you anymore. And I need you to find something to do. I'm like, Atira, I'm not doing what I used to do. What can I do in Tallahassee? I can't work for anybody. You've been self-employed your entire life. You want to tell anyone what to do, and so I'm like, I would not be a good employee. I would work really hard, but I'd get very annoyed at people making silly decisions when I knew the decision they should be making, according to me.
In my humble opinion, yeah.
Exactly, So she said, well, Mom, why don't you start a home school? You did pretty good with us. And by the way, in between those years, I pulled them out of school, put them in school. I never really wanted to do it because it wasn't my path. But, I was very frustrated. I was raising a Black boy in a very white neighborhood, and he had a lot of opinion about things. The other one was quiet. Everyone's like, oh, he's just so nice. And the other one was like, so when are we going to celebrate Black History Month? It's coming, and when are we going to talk about something besides slavery? And, why? Because he loved history. He was well read. So here we are sitting in this block, and And she was like, Mom, you've got to do something because I'm not getting that feed that I usually get from you. And she said, I said, well, I don't even know if I like other people's children. And that was real. I love my own. I do anything for them, but I never had to do it for other people's kids. I was always the house in the neighborhood, my husband and I, where the kids would always come and they played basketball. That was always the house, but I wasn't responsible for these children and making sure that they were getting their education.
Sure.
So she made me go get a job at a daycare. That lasted about 3 weeks, only because I teach 3-year-olds how to read. And they figured they'd give me this because I didn't have any experience in daycare or anything. So they gave me the 3-year-olds. You can't mess them up, just play with colors and paint. Except the 3-year-olds in 3 weeks were emergent readers. And parents had 4-year-olds in the 4-year-old class. So the parents began to complain to the director because their 3-year-old was coming home and telling them what their 4-year-old should have been telling them. So I anticipated at some point, once this provider recognized that I had a little bit of magic there, that she would ask me to share. And I was actually willing to do that because I didn't see this as something I was going to live in, except she didn't. She asked me if I could continue doing what they gave me as curriculum with children. Silly move.
Yeah.
And I decided to, just say, I'm going to give you my notice and, give you a chance to find somebody else. But I don't know how to do less. Maybe she should have put me in the 4-year-old classroom at that point. I don't know, but that wasn't what happened. So I went back home and told my daughter, so here's what I found out. I found out that I really like other people's children. They're kind of cool. They actually listen a little bit better than your own.
You can give them back, and they do. They hear you. They hear you differently.
They hear you differently. And, if anybody notices, I have bass in my voice, so I have a very low voice. So if I'm saying, excuse me, Johnny, sit right there, it's very authoritative. And they responded really well. So they learned really quickly. And so the long and short of it is I decided that I wanted to do this, except I knew nobody in Tallahassee. I was like, who's going to send their children to a stranger from New York? My daughter called one of her mentors, who was Shanta Haywood, who was the Dean of Graduate Studies at Florida A&M University. And she said Shanta had always asked her, how did you get here at 15, turning 16 years of age? She said, well, my mom, she always, and so she called Shanta, and Shanta had a 4-year-old son. So she said, you know what? I'm sending my son to your mother. I think I taught her son how to read in about 2 weeks. And back then there was no Facebook or anything. Like, he was the only kid I had. There was no Facebook or anything like that. She sent an email to all of her friends. My baby can read. And the rest was history. We started the home-based daycare. Had to call it a daycare because you had to get a license. But I told the parents, they got to be toilet trained. You got to pick them up, early after I finish teaching them. I'm not that all day, I'm not the daycare, and they did. And the rest was history. Before you knew it, we were busting out of the seams of my house. And my kids were all gone to college by this time. So we were busting out of the seams of the house. And the very same parent said, I have a building in town. Why don't you take the building?
That's when people believe in you and they see the value, and when it's set up.
And of course, I didn't want any additional expense. It was pretty cool, rolling out of the bed, putting on a crock pot, teaching a couple of kids in the room. They go home. I go sit by the pool. That was my plan. But God had another plan, and the rest was history. And we moved in, and I would be very remiss to say that my son-in-law, Patrick, who also really, really liked children, and who really, really, he was working someplace else, but I found him constantly being over at the preschool, and I'm like, Atira, he comes every day and he asks me if he can do anything. I'm not going to tell him no for long. I'm gonna give him something to do. I can't afford to pay him, but I'm gonna give him something to do. And the rest was history. So we stayed there. We grew out of that place. We now have a location that can hold upwards of 75 to 100 children. And we're a pre-K through third grade environment now. And that only happened because once the children got to the kindergarten age, our kindergarten age children were working on a first and second grade level, as represented by my grandsons who are going to the fifth grade this year, and they're still 8 years old.
Yeah, well, and
so, and Nyla, right, my granddaughter Nyla, same thing. She's in ninth grade. I can't even believe it. Ninth grade this year, and she just turned 13. And she's already finished almost 2 years of high school. So she won't be there long. No. And if I attribute it to one thing, I attribute it to early reading. All of my children read early. All of my grandchildren read early. Once I started Brownsville Preparatory Institute, if you brought your child, you were going to read early because that's what we do. And when a child can read, it's amazing all of the other things that they can do. I'm very proud to say that based on all academic standards, we are a developmentally inappropriate environment. That's what we've been told, because it's not good that 3-year-olds can write and 3-year-olds can read. They need to go play in the sandbox. But what most people don't know, when you're teaching children and you're using song and you're using all of the other components of their creativity, you know, all of our kids learn their multiplication tables by the time they're 12. How does that happen? Because here's the 5. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60. Slide to the left. Slide to the right. Bring it to the front. Move it to the back way. 5 in the air. Lean back, lean back. So why wouldn't you want to learn your 5 times table? Mm-hmm. So we are firm believers in, thank you for letting me sing. We are firm believers in teaching them things that they don't necessarily need right now, but when they do, the recall is really easy. Think about the songs that your parents may have played on the radio when you were a little kid. I sometimes hear songs and I say to myself, how do you know that? How do I still remember all of the words of something my parents listened to? It's because recall is real. And the mind is a sponge. So we teach them all of those things. There's another song that they learn when they're 4 years old in Brownsville, and it's called All on Planet Earth. Dr. Edith Davis wrote this song to teach college students earth science. And it's too long to go through the whole thing, but it's like, we're on planet Earth, where we have our atmosphere, our lithosphere, and our biosphere. It goes up and down, and everything's made of matter, and matter's made of elements, and elements are made, and it goes on and on and on. And it's just a long thing. But if you were in earth science, and you simply remembered that song, there'd be black holes, black doors, brown holes, right? You would be able to breeze through earth science, because it's every fact that you would ever want to know in earth science. So we have ways of making that happen where the children actually think they're playing. They don't even understand how smart they are. Because I tell parents, please do me a favor and do not show them off like a trophy. Yes, we're proud of our children. We're so very proud of our children, you know, and we should be able to show them off. But we have, I teach my parents to show them off when they're not listening. You can tell your friends, look, my baby, he knows his 12 times tables and he's only 6 years old and he knows how to use them. If I say to him, how much is 6 times 12? He's gonna either count by 12s or count by 6s. Or you can say, can you show somebody blah, 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 but then not sit there in the mind of the child. He's so smart, you know, because they don't even realize how smart they are, you know.
Why don't you want the parents to kind of tell the children how smart they are? Is it from the sake of wanting them to be humble?
There's an act wanting them to be humble, because you know what? They have not learned enough yet. There are life things that you have to learn. You don't want that very same child going and telling someone, well, I know my 12 times tables. Do you? You know, you don't want that lack of humility in a child when they do know so much. Do you want to say, great job, good, yes, you know, yes, you absolutely do. I believe in praising them for what they do, but there is a balance in that, where the cocky doesn't take over. Because guess what happens? When the cocky takes over, they stop learning because they think they know enough.
Well, that, and also you're raising, and I'm gonna, you're raising the kids in your school. You're raising children that are accelerated in one domain, like in one level, so they're in the level of cognition, but it doesn't mean that their social emotional development is caught up. So yeah,
That's right.
you were in first grade and you go to the fifth grade and you're like, hey, this is what I know. The fifth graders
Exactly.
are like, well, guess what? Like, I don't care what you know, right? I'm going to show you physically, and that
Right.
their physical development isn't caught up.
Right.
So that makes good sense.
Exactly. And we have to talk parents off the bridge sometimes because, they're like, well, because we skip a lot of children, but we have a policy of not skipping them until we no longer have a grade that accommodates them. And the reason for that is because we do have maturity expectations of them that we hold them to. So I can take a 4-year-old and put them in a first grade classroom academically, but if they're in that first grade classroom academically, but not socially and emotionally, before you know it, it all begins to break down. So our theory and thought is, if we can at least keep them until the second or third grade in our care, we're able to address that expectation of maturity. We're able, while we're teaching them the things that they're learning. So by the time they go, the parents tell me all the time, my kid is like the most mature kid in the classroom. Why? Because they had to learn that at Brownsville. You can't learn third grade work and not have the demeanor and disposition of a third grade child.
And just also the culture that you all set.
And it's also the culture and the expectation.
Yeah. I want to say, kind of make one point, and then I want us to make sure we move into like what the wonderful things your school is doing now. So when you talked about children being sponges, let me use my degree here for a second. Yes, as we think about the mind, right? The mind is a sponge, right? So we can hold way more information than we are aware that we're able to hold, right? So even right now, there's a ton of things that all of us in our environments are not paying attention to. So you're not paying attention to the temperature in the room. You're not paying attention to like the little sound of the fan clicking on and stuff like that, because your brain, the front part of your brain, can only attend to so much at once, or at least we've trained ourselves. But that means that like exposure, especially exposure that is applied, anything that stays or files away in our long-term memory, we technically can always pull out, and that's what you're doing, right? You're filing and storing information in their long-term memories, but you're requiring application for them.
That's right.
Pretty, soon thereafter, right? Through the repetition of the songs, but then it serves them, right? It's the scaffold for all the teachers.
That's right.
Scaffold of information that creates the building blocks for future knowledge. So
absolutely. Well, thank you for putting it that way. I'm going to call you into the next PTO meeting so you can explain that to the parents.
Let me use my degree real fast. Okay.
Absolutely.
So let's talk to me about how you all are transitioning and adapting, because our two states, you're in Florida, Arizona. I mean, I'm just gonna say it's shameful. It's shameful, and it is because of our administration, right, and our government, the people in government. So how you all are setting the benchmark and exceeding expectations. Of course you are.
We are. So and here's why. Because there's no leadership. It's as simple as that. There's no leadership. Guess what? When this whole thing came down in, I want to say March, but it really wasn't March. One of our virtual teachers this year was in China. She'd been teaching there in China. She was an intern with us way back when she was a student. When she got out of college, she taught with us for another 2 years. Then she went to then she went to the public school system, because of course they could pay her a lot more than we could. And then she went to China for 3 years. And she took she had a daughter, she took her daughter to China. It's like, that's so wonderful, because the immersion of another culture, it was amazing. And then all of a sudden, I think it was around November, December, I saw a Facebook page that showed her back. So of course I recontacted her and I'm like, hey, you're back? She said, oh, we're back, like back. And I'm like, well, what brought you back? She said she began to see a lot of people leaving and wasn't getting enough explanation about why these people were leaving. And of course, what we do know now is this thing was happening for a while. So she left, came back to the States, went to work down south in another school district. And then March came and schools were closed. So we had some choices. We could have kept our preschool open and closed our school age, because with school age, we have to follow the mandates of the state. The state did not close preschools, they closed schools. But it was our level of responsibility that said, hold on, we don't even know what's coming. We don't know what this looks like. We don't know how it's going to affect our children, our staff, and then even ourselves. I don't know if I mentioned that my son donated, that same child, that same problem child turned savior. He donated his kidney to me, and I stand here on his gift, and I'm immune suppressed. So I catch colds when nobody catches colds. I don't have the luxury of being able to get sick like the average person. So it was like, shut it down. We'll do virtual. We even began doing virtual with our preschool age children, which we were like, oh my God, okay, so how do you do this virtual with preschool?
Yeah, so how
How does that happen, right? How do you get mice in the room to come sit in front of a computer? Because that's what it looks like, right? And it was a blessing that they had enough time in the building with us for our voice commands to be able to work on a screen. And the teachers did an amazing job. They just followed what they did. They sent the same packets home of work. We met the children on Zoom. We created a playground. Wednesdays we had a playground, and then Thursdays we had lunch day, lunch with Mr. Patrick. And, so they had events to go to, as well as seeing their teacher, through the week to learn. And it became a norm for them. So by June, we're like, okay, now in the meantime, we also had to make some really tough decisions in regard to our staff, because what did we learn in virtual land? That we actually had more capacity than we did in the face-to-face. So from a business side, we had to make some business decisions, because that's what the whole world was doing. You can't keep doing what you were doing if what you were doing isn't generating what it was generating. And so we did that, except we found out in the state of Florida, it was horrible. Half of my staff got unemployment. The other half of my staff did not get unemployment to this day, because the state, I believe they were just taking and tossing the papers away so they didn't have to pay certain people. And I don't know how it was determined, but I do know half was paid, half was not. So by June, I'm like, okay, this is crazy. We have got to figure our way back. So what did we do? The first thing that we did was we decided to open for June, we required mandatory mask wearing. In the state of Florida, it's an option. If you choose, there was no if you choose at Brownsville. If you choose to not wear a mask, you choose to not be in the building. We then shut down the building to parents, and the only people that could come in now was staff and children. We implemented thermometer checking. We let the parents know that if it was not high temperatures, if their temperature was simply 100.1 or 2, I can't remember the exact number that we utilized, you're going home, because we're not waiting for a full-blown temperature. If you're coughing and sneezing too much, you're going home, And the worst part about that is a lot of the things that children were exhibiting were just basic common colds. But what does COVID represent? It represents itself like basic common colds, until it gets worse, right? So, we did that. The teachers wear masks all the time and shields. So they have to wear a mask, and then they have to wear the clear shield, over it as well. They had testing, right? Mandatory testing of our staff. We had to do that. Schools aren't requiring mandatory testing of staff, which is just the craziest thing ever. Does all of this mean that nothing happened? Well, no. One day, in the very beginning, we got our first call with someone saying, I got 101 temperature. I was like, okay, stay out of the building, go get tested. And we immediately went into protocol. So this person had not been in the building for, I think, about 4 or 5 days. at the time when we found out that there was a temperature. But we could not tell whether the 6th day was that, was at the beginning, the middle, or the end of whatever was going on. So we had to contact all of our parents. We let them know that we were immediately shutting down so that we could get all of the staff tested. We told them that they need to go get their children tested. And we thought that we'd be able to open up, had the building sanitized and cleared and cleaned and everything, spray, everything. Not Lysol spray, like industrial machine, that liquid that doesn't kill kids, spray on every single thing in the building, including bulletin boards. And then the problem was, in the state of Florida, getting test results back. So we had all been tested, but we still couldn't open at that projected date because we did not get our results back. So we could have moved on, but we didn't. It was like, nope, sorry, didn't get the results back, call you when we got results. And literally we were closed about 14 days in the beginning of the summer. Word got into the neighborhood, Brownsville is closed because of COVID. We weren't closed because of COVID. We were closed because it was the right thing to do at that moment.
You could also run the CDC. I mean, you were setting the standard for the CDC guidelines. Is that what where you got your information from, or was this just good, your mom?
So the CDC put out a brochure after we set up, and we said, okay, they got a brochure now. Parents were sending us the brochure. Here's a brochure. So we sat there and we looked at the brochure. We're like, okay, we did that. We had done more things than the CDC even required. So what began to happen was I began to get invited onto panels with the school district, starting to talk about, because we were now functioning. They were thinking about how they were gonna function. They needed to talk to people that were actually functioning. And, and I shared that with them, and I shared that this non-mandatory mask wearing is going to be your demise. You're creating a petri dish, and that's that. So that was a lot of what we did do. The television stations have been coming to the school this week. We had that. Oh, and then we were going to open on the 10th. And one of the parents called me and said that, hey, Ms. Brown, the parents are talking. And they're like, it would be a really great idea if we implemented mandatory COVID testing in order to come back to school. And I'm like, hold the bus, y'all are not about to ruin my marketing plan of sustainability, messing with parents on this topic. I said, what we will do is we were getting ready to have our orientations. I said, we'll have our orientation. I will put this at the front of the meeting on both of the orientations and toss it out. We will create a survey and we will get the survey back. And it wasn't even so much, because parents were like, I know my kid don't have COVID. They haven't been anywhere. And my statement to them was, your child may be fine, but wouldn't you want to know if the child sitting next to your child was fine? So it took it off of them thinking we think their kid has COVID. And
and you're really pulling on community, you're pulling on the idea of community. And something we haven't said is that your school primarily serves Black children. And
it does.
As I think about Black children and families, and as I think about that too, even the comments of that your students are developmentally inappropriate, right? Because they're feeding, there's a part of that too that is like race-based, and that they, just not an inability to see, right? Black children as being as bright as they are.
Exactly.
But on the first point I'm trying to make is that you're pulling on concepts of community, you're pulling on concepts of organizing, right? Because you are a strong leader, right? If we do this, this is the result, and people believe in you because you have proven to them that you're somebody who can make magic, right?
And if I can say enough about saying what you mean and meaning what you say. Because if I were just doing the voice talk of make you happy when I'm talking to you and make you happy when I'm talking to you, you have to have the strength. And this is whether you're working in an office, this is no matter where you are, no matter what your capacity is. You don't have to be the boss of anybody. if you have your conviction about what you believe is right, and people can't see you wavering for what they may perceive as your own benefit, there's nothing they can say. And that's what's important.
Do you feel that you, and we're running out of time, do you feel that you, because I think of decision making and speed of decision making is one aspect of that. So what's your process for making the decision? And then two, I think that there's another part of like having the strength and the conviction to kind of execute your decision. So would you say you're a fast decision?
And on a dime, okay? Because you know, COVID is everything on a dime, okay? So first of all, I have a team, and I have an amazing team. Okay, it starts with Dr. Charles, who will always, you know, no, mommy, we're not doing that. Here's how we're going to frame this, you know. So she's always there as that voice of reason. And then I have Patrick, who will definitely stand there to execute the things that, you know, that we have in place and have an opinion about what we should and what we shouldn't do. At the time that we were thinking about opening, Atira did not feel that we should open for the very logical reasons that she felt we should not open. But Patrick and I kind of like, okay, we get that part, but here's what we can't do. We can't let Brownsville go away because we're not trying. And that's what we were facing. So we had to put our foot out there. We then had to convene with our staff, because guess what? We can make a decision to open, but staff can go like, excuse you?
Yes.
What are you expecting me to do? And
also your environment wasn't supporting, I mean, your state, so that's a hard thing when you're doing something that the outer infrastructure, the outer layer is not supporting.
Is not supporting, exactly. And let's not even stop and talk about the cost factors of all of these things. You know, I hear people talking about restaurants, and nobody loves restaurants more than me. I hear people talking about restaurants with bars. Nobody loves restaurants with bars better than me. But I heard and then we heard about public schools. But is anybody hearing anything about how do we help and sustain private schools?
You know,
or small businesses, you know, none of that. So we literally had to take our dollars and make some decisions. So the biggest decision that we made was, profit is not a thought for us in this season. We don't care about profit. We need to cover. So as long as we're covering, then we're good. We can look at profit in the future, you know, but if we can cover, we can survive. And we made a cover plan. And then we didn't trust the PPP because they were changing the rules every 20 minutes. And at the end of the day, I was like, I'm not paying these people back this money that they want to give me, you know, because they're going to tell me I didn't spend it the way I should have. So it can be forgiven if you do it the way they say. And if it's not, then you owe the money. But the rules weren't clear. So we got PPP and we just put it in the bank and acted like we didn't have it and operated on the business we had in front of us. The same way we do each and every day.
There's something so important that I want to make a point on that, because I've often like talking about, you know, essential, well, I don't say it this way, but it is what is dismantling of structures is usually what I'm subversively discussing. And so like what you just talked about is that you guys gave up like capitalism or profit, right? You said as being the structure that guided you for the greater good. So you went into a sustainable structure. You went into what does the organization and the community need? You already had the community part. And I'm like making a big deal about this too, because it's like this question of like, how do we do it, right? This is part of the blueprint.
That's right. And I think that businesses who want to survive are going to have to think about it. Our state has decided there's something called the voluntary pre-kindergarten program. And the voluntary pre-kindergarten program offers parents a stipend for the 4-year-old year of their child. Well, during the initial shutdown, they continued to pay that stipend. So we were able to continue providing class. This year, the school year now, they decided that if you were not in the brick and mortar, and that's very Republican, if you don't come back to school, we're not giving you that money. And if you're not giving me that money, why am I going to create an online environment for a parent who wants to be virtual if I'm not going to get paid for doing what we do? So we were faced with some other choices. And that other choice that we had to make, and parents live for this 4-year-old year. You know, if you're a person who doesn't get a whole lot of, you know, money because you look forward to that 4-year-old year. And now here we had a bunch of parents that were not going to be able to utilize it because they did want their children home. And we said, we cannot make these parents choose. They have to make the decision that works for them personally, and we have to adjust. So what we decided was we would cover the stipend. So they would still pay us what they would have paid themselves as if the stipend were in place. So that was sacrifice, right? And so we decided to do that. It's a hard one. It really, really is a hard one because every penny counts when you're running a business. You know, we're not that quote unquote daycare that doesn't pay living wages to our staff. So it mattered, but we did that and we thought it was the right thing to do. And our parents appreciated that because now they were able to make a decision based on, do I want my kid in school? Do I not? And I spoke to all of the parents and let them know we're all removing our judgment in this. How are you gonna let your kid come to school? Because guess what you don't know? She's a first responder and she has to go to work. You know, he's a cop. He gotta go to work. She's a nurse. She has to go to work. I work in Publix. I gotta go to work because my livelihood of feeding my family, I don't have the luxury of having a job that allows me to work from home. And those parents were feeling horrible. So we really put a mantle up to tear down all that judgment about how you could do this to your child and really supported that with parents. And we thought that giving that stipend to them was one way that we could do that.
You leaned into community through sustainable practices. Yeah.
That's it. That was it. And we continue to do so. We open up on Monday and we're so excited because guess what? Nobody's even thought about this part. How about the part that engaged parents go into their children's school? They volunteer in the classroom. Kids go on field trips. You invite other people into your environment to continue to enrich your children. All of that is gone.
Yes.
So what we did this week, since we had an extra week, I had all of my staff make videos in their classrooms talking to their parents. Hey, you know what? Here, welcome to my classroom. Here's what we do. Here's how we do it. Hey, let me show you the folder. Here's where I need you to sign at night. Here's what they front-faced with the parents through their video. And then they front-faced with the parents by telling them to make sure that the children watch it. And then they sent home the documents for them to read. And they compelled them to stay engaged. We have this thing called Kid Report. We compelled them to stay engaged because the teachers now can take pictures of what's happening in class with it, so the parent will still be able to see their child, because the anxiety that parents will feel about we have parents that have never been in our building. So this isn't even the parent that came for a tour, signed up, at least I saw it. We have parents that have never been in the building and have to now send their child into something they don't know.
Yeah, we could talk about this forever, and I am so interested, but we are hitting, right, we're running over time. So,
Absolutely.
I mean, I just need to have you back, basically.
Yes.
I hear all the amazingness that you're doing, and I hope that people, parents and educators hear this as a model, right? As a model. Where can people reach you? After we're done, I can share your
Absolutely. So we have a Facebook page also. It's called the Brownsville Preparatory Institute. Please like our page, We have an Instagram called Brownsville Prep. You can find us there. We have a website called brownsvilleprep.com. So you can find us there. And we still answer phones at 850-212-7, nope. Lord, I'm giving my cell phone number out. 850-412-9390. What else has been happening since I've been doing these virtual videos is we are actually, because our online setup is so powerful in terms of the teach side of it, we are now enrolling children from other states in our virtual platform. And that's really interesting because it wasn't something we planned on. It wasn't, there was no strategy set up for it. But when parents heard what we do, they immediately were like, hold on, if it's going to be virtual, can my child come to your virtual?
Well, and that's actually a wonderful closing to the sustainable structure, right? You're willing to kind of do what was best for your community at the time, and your community, one, expanded, and two, is responding to you.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you, Mrs. Brown. I love you so much. I miss you. Yes, I know the house is available. Yeah, I'm gonna get there. We're gonna quarantine for 2 weeks. I'm gonna go to Florida and just hang out because we're all in the remote world right now.
No, you got to do that. And you wouldn't even have to quarantine for 2 weeks. You just have to come, get tested, stay a couple of days because you know how things work. And then once you're negative and have been there a couple of days,
be at the beach.
Yeah. And I want to tell people something else. We're also worried about, and I'm saying this only from a personal family side. You were talking about being transparent. I lost my mother in March, and I was very sick in March, and I thought I had the flu for almost a month. And what I realized, well, I lost my mother. She was in a nursing home also. I went to the doctor after I was better, and he was looking at my records, and he said, I think you had COVID. I need you to go get an antibody test. And I went and got an antibody test, and I did have antibodies, which meant I had COVID, which meant my mother, who also had all those very symptoms that I had, my mother had COVID. And I feel very confident to say that that was probably what she died from, because she was actually on her way home from the rehab and then got injured, for lack of a better term, again, and we wound up losing her. I don't know if I gave it to her. I don't know if she gave it to me. My family was very quiet about saying anything to me about it because it's like, Lord, please don't say anything to her. Don't make her think she killed her mama, But, I've got the peace and I've got the mercy and grace from God that if she was going to go, thank God she was able to go with us by her side. Because honestly, the way it is now would have killed me.
Yes.
So,
well, and when it's our time regardless of how.
That's it. So families, just know this, families, as opposed to worrying so much about getting corona from the supermarket, from the places you go, families are catching it from families because we're comfortable with each other and we don't protect ourselves around each other. And that's where it's happening. So my son is here now and he wears a mask in the house. He's like, Mom, I'm not even trying to get you sick. We have protocols that we live in. Dr. Fauci said it. He said, when my family gets together, everybody wears a mask. Why? Because it's not because we don't have to.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your wisdom. Absolutely. And actually and of course, we've talked, but I'm sorry about, to know, about your mom. And that's been a conversation I've been wanting to have. But that segues into next week, actually. I will have Luana Morales on the show. She is both a birth and a death doula. And actually we're both death midwives. So we will talk about that. We're in this phase of extreme death and how that is playing out for us socially. So we'll talk about that. So thanks everyone. Great. Have a beautiful weekend.
You too.
I'll see you soon. You already know.
Absolutely. I'm counting on it. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.